Joining me today on the Neil Wilkins podcast is Leonard Scheiner. Now, Leonard has been helping law firms, solo attorneys, and business owners for at least the past decade. He focuses on developing their brand marketing for new clients and predictably growing the revenues within these firms. He'll outline as well some authority for his clients, and that is a key thing that we're going to be delving deeply into on this particular podcast episode. One firm that Leonard's worked with has achieved a 300% increase in revenue, and others have earned millions of dollars worth of new business driven from Leonard's frameworks and tactics. He is the CEO of Geek Haus, which is a law firm marketing agency which is really pushing the boundaries, I guess you could say, for learning and optimizing marketing within professional services. So who better qualified to talk to us about developments within the industry and what we can all learn from top quality professional services marketing. Welcome to the show, Leonard.
Neil, thank you so much for having me.
This is a lot of accolades there. I know you're an award-winning agency and everything else as well. There's a lot going on. I mean, law firm marketing, it has to be one of the most exciting and dynamic industries to be working in right now.
Yeah, the bio of everyone usually sounds like a rock star is coming out, right? And then I'm always pleasantly surprised when they're very human, right? So what I enjoy about working in a service-based marketing role is really that you get to package people. You're not packaging products, you're packaging people. So that relationship aspect and, whatever is on the new trend is really something that we get to play with, we get to test, we get to use.
And inside of that, of course, is a differentiator, a massive differentiator, isn't it, between firms? Because a lot of firms, I guess, in a lot of businesses in many sectors are operating in a like for like, almost commodity style market, aren't they? Where, I can go to company A and they've got the same kind of products as company B, but it's the people that are the differentiator. Did you find this within the work you're doing?
Very much so. I mean, the way that you would review a new dentist or a new doctor or, even someone new to do your hair, right? They're service-based people. And the people who are doing those things, the people who's doing your dental work, the doctor and the hygienist, or the person who is doing your hair, right? We know we can go to one person and tell them the exact same thing. We're taking the same head, right? Of course, but the skills are very different. And so the same is true when we're talking about lawyers and law firms. And so when we're looking at firms who are in a very competitive, highly saturated space, a lot of us think about personal injury, right? Car accident attorneys. But it's really everywhere, right? There's a lot of competition in oil and gas. There's a lot of competition in business litigation. There's a lot of competition in real estate. There's competition everywhere. So the differentiating factor is what makes you unique. And as people, like I said, we're packaging people. Everyone is unique. Now, whether they come out and raise their hand and identify as being unique, that may be not the case. But if you're, skillful to extract what those unique qualities are, whether it's professional or personal, then that's really where we can start to market that person in all of their true capacity, which again is the unique factor and sets them apart.
And I'm sure sort of all the marketers listening to this will think, oh, Leonard, you're speaking such sense. This is kind of what I want to be doing. And this is my big dream, I guess, for the firm or the business that I'm representing here. But when I come to actually do it, I meet resistance. I'm here as a marketer and I know that this is the right thing to do. And yet when I go to talk to maybe a fee earner, and this is where I find there's a real irony, certainly with the firms that I've worked with, is that the fee earners say, we need to be generating more revenues. We need to be out there, getting new clients. And then you give them this opportunity to, hey, we're going to actually put you on a pedestal. We're going to make you, really, increase your profile. And then they back off. Why is that? Why does that happen?
Well, it's funny, all people, right? We have the number one fear, one of the number one fears, because there's some argument there, but it's public speaking. And we think that that's different for attorneys because, oh, they're attorneys, right? Like they're bold, they're confident, they'll give a trial, they'll, go call up a judge. Yes, but that's just them operating in their regular lane, right? Just like a runner would run a big old marathon and be ready to hop to it the next day, right? Well, if you're operating in your climate, in your norm, people might see that and think, whoa, right? Like if we saw the calendar for Elon Musk's day, we'd be like, oh my gosh, right? He's probably flying here and doing this and having 100 meetings, or, we would be like, wow. But for him, that's normal. So same thing is true. Like the outside perspective kind of puts it on a pedestal. But when you're just operating it, you don't think of yourself as someone who is going to be public, who is going to be out there. So what's my point in sharing this? For attorneys, some want to sit behind the computer and just sling motions, right? Be a motion monkey and never go to court. Okay, that's not the person who's typically the partner in a firm. That's not the person who's typically the face of a firm, right? They're in the back, they're doing the work, very, very valuable, very, very important. Can't really run a firm without them, but they're not the face. So when we're marketing a law firm, yes, we are marketing the name as the brand, but what is going to make people come to that firm versus another firm, a competitor firm, or maybe just another firm in general? It's going to be the people. What unique qualities do they have? Have they spoken places? Have they been featured places? Do they have YouTube videos on something really specific that the client or potential clients are looking for, right? And the good attorneys do this. They're very focused in their area. And that's part of my mission and journey working with them, is to share that, look, all marketing is an effort to be seen, right? All advertising, everyone wants their advertising seen. Marketing is the same way, right? It's an effort to be seen. And so you, Mr. or Mrs. Attorney, went to school. You got the knowledge. You have the experience. You are barred here and barred there. You are the package that needs to be sitting on the shelf. So that's how we work with them in some way to pull them sometimes out of that shell, and sometimes it's not pulling them out of their shell, it's just putting the full pieces of the puzzle together.
No, I'm curious here, Leonard. So, when a lot of us kind of think of attorneys and lawyers in general, I guess because we've been through the media and through popular culture, instantly people like Harvey Specter and Mike Ross from Suits will pop into our psyche, and we'll be thinking of these super slick, charismatic, good-looking, well-dressed lawyers who don't ever seem to put a foot wrong. They seem to be able to present with confidence and just be almost like at a perfection kind of level. They seem flawless. Is that what everybody who is going to be putting themselves onto this pedestal or putting themselves out there has to do? Or can we actually be a little bit more normal, if I use that word?
Definitely, we want to be more normal. The word that I typically use is relatable, humanize yourself, right? And keep in mind that when we see the lawyers on TV, they're actors, right? And we can see that with doctors, we see that with police, right? We've all watched the show and been like, that would never happen like that. Well, the same is true for legal shows, right? And so when we're working with someone like that, we want to encourage them that they get to be themselves. And I say this time and time again, and I'll sometimes get that look like, okay, but like, what's the real secret sauce? The real secret sauce is being yourself, right? And if you're a crazy neurotic person, some of that should come out in your marketing, right? In your video, maybe in your background, right? Or if you're a really logical thinking person, or if you like cats, or if you like boats, or like all of those things that seem not to be important, they work to craft who you are. And if I have a boat and Bob Jones' attorney has a boat, guess what? Now I can talk to him about my legal problem, but I can also talk about my boat a little bit. And so now I can get the trust factor because I know about boats and you know about boats. So I can mention something. And if you come back with a response that's intelligent and productive and informed, guess what? Now the client is kind of positioning where's their level of expertise, right? So we don't want to be just masters at being a lawyer, right? At what area of law. We really want to show our whole person because that's how we're going to get that trust factor, the trust, the credibility. And we know that any sales process, hiring an attorney being one of them, is the know, like, trust factor. And knowing them, liking them, that trust though, like you can know a lot of people, you can like people, but that trust factor, they've got to have some value exchange within the conversation so that you think, know, and trust them. You've got to go through that process so that you can really establish being that trusted advisor for that potential client.
And what I like about this is just this almost this natural resonance or this natural alignment of, if you take this approach, you are going to be attracting people like you. I'm thinking from the lawyer's perspective, because not every client is going to be of the same value. I'm not just talking financial value, I'm talking maybe lifelong relationship value, so real customer lifetime value or client lifetime value. But if we take this approach and we are then starting to attract maybe clients who are like us, and this applies to every industry, it's not just law, we're going to start to be operating in a little sort of ecosystem of people who we're both familiar with. But as you say, they will like and trust us as much as we do in the opposite direction, because it is a two-way street, this, isn't it?
It is definitely a two-way street. There's a leader in the relationship for sure on the professional side, right? We are the trusted advisor as the lawyer. We're the trusted advisor for the client. And so it's up to us to have the solutions, to have the rationale, to have the process of how we get to a certain goal. But here's the deal. People want to do business with people that they like. And it's really hard to build that relationship when you are strictly talking transactional, only about the topic or the dispute or the matter at hand. And I know that a lot of you call them fee earners. I love that. I call them the billable people. When we have our billing person, they don't want to spend the extra 6 minutes asking about your dog and your cat and the weather. One, because let's just be honest, like maybe we don't care, but also two, we don't want to waste the time, right? Or more so, if we're in that client relationship, they don't want to waste the time, right? So what I say to that is, it's a dance. Being a human is not a science, it's an art, right? The marketing is scientific. There's corners and boundaries to the sandbox that we're going to play in doing your marketing and building the authority and building the presence, right? Like we can't have well, we could go into a lot of discussion about what we couldn't have, but there's boundaries, right? There's protocols, there's blueprints of how we get from point A to point B, but there's, depending on who it is, there's going to be a lot of variables within there. And this is why I will share with attorneys, well, yeah, I'm going to do the marketing myself. Yeah, I'm going to do my advertising myself. I'm going to run it. I'm going to do this. Or I got one guy. That's a concern, because I would never hire my brain surgeon to do foot surgery or vice versa, right? Hire the person for what they're the expert in. People hire the attorney to handle their legal problems, but then they're also going to be the marketer, and then they're also going to be the business manager, and then they're also going to be the facilities. It's too many hats. And the solos, I mean, everyone knows that, you got to wear a lot of hats in the beginning, but once there is a decent flow to the firm, that's really when we want to start making their time the most valuable. Keep them in their zone of genius.
So when they're in their zone of genius, I mean, I always use a phrase, thought leadership. Does that come into play here? Because I know we're talking about transacting through the relationship, not necessarily through the actual service provided. But is there this kind of almost common ground, beyond the "I've got a boat, you've got a boat" thing, which I think is a great analogy. It's really, really helpful. But is there like almost a professional version, which is thought leadership on a really specific topic? Does that come into play here? Because I would imagine that is something you could transact with as a lawyer.
And there's great examples of that. There's great examples of when an attorney has been featured in the media, or has been on the news, or has been in a legal journal, right? One of our clients was just in a hospitality legal journal, right? It's an industry journal. That's a really great place to be, right? Doctors will always refer, well, the medical journal said this, the medical journal said that, right? So when we're looking at that professional relationship building, that credibility, right? We want to put tokens on that side of things. One way that we can do that is by not just our marketing, not just being on a billboard, but by truly being an expert and giving expert advice to not just our clients, but to the media. When you can act as an expert in something to the media, guess what? Now it's no longer you talking about you and your expertise. It's no longer your Google reviews, where those are wonderful. I'm not discounting them, but it's other people talking about you, right? And it's kind of that one-to-one relationship. But now you've got a local newspaper. Now you've got maybe Forbes, maybe you've got Bloomberg, maybe ABC, CBS, Fox, TV or written article. When you are landing that type of interview and then being published, there's going to be a quote, and it says by Bob Jones, founder at the business law firm Jones and Smith PLLC, right? What does that do? Now we're taking all of the trust, all of the credibility from that media organization and putting it onto that attorney. Because what happens when Bloomberg says that you, Bob Jones, the business attorney, has this great quote, right? We can use that logo from Bloomberg. Now we're the lawyer that was quoted in Bloomberg. Now we're not overcoming this with, I have a boat, you have a boat, Bob. But now we've got some third party who already has a well founded, credible, established organization who's lending some of that credibility your way. It's an excellent way to solidify your professional expertise.
It's quite exciting, isn't it? I think if I was a lawyer or a law firm marketer or any kind of service marketer listening to this, I'd be rubbing my hands together thinking there's something really exciting. We don't do enough of this. We're all about the firm and maybe the senior partner or managing partner who we occasionally put a little image and a social media meme or something in a quote or something like that. But it's very, very light touch. Feels like we've got an opportunity here to really take ownership of this. Does this apply across a whole range of different media then, this kind of approach? I mean, thinking just the way you're describing there about being quoted on CBS or Bloomberg or something like that. Could I, if I'm a lawyer, could I do a TEDx talk, for example? Would that be something that would have the same level of kind of gravitas, I guess?
It would. I mean, TEDx is a very well-respected stage. TEDx is something that a lot of people would strive to do, right? Again, it's a media opportunity where you showed up, you delivered what you delivered, and now you're taking that TEDx logo, that TEDx credibility, that TEDx, all the perception, all the positive goodwill, all the brand equity that TED has put into building that brand, and you're taking a fraction of that for yourself, right? Brilliant idea as a way to not only gain exposure, right, or not only to gain authority, but to gain exposure, right? Because part of this is, marketing is always an effort to be seen. And if we could be seen by 100 people, fantastic. If we could be seen by 100,000 people, even more fantastic. So that would be a great platform as well. And on that note, it's not just a TEDx talk, right, that has the big name, but it's also smaller conferences, right? It is the National Personal Injury Lawyer Conference. It's the National Bankruptcy Lawyer Conference. It's the National Estate Planning Lawyer Conferences. And if you are working with a publicist or someone who's helping you with this, that's something that they should be suggesting. It's how do we get you into positions of authority? Not authority as a role, but authority as a moment, right? As being able to hold space in that room. And so whether it is on a TEDx stage or it's at a national convention or it's a local bar convention, right? Speak at a local bar, right? The number of people in the room is only going to help, right? But we want to be able to really have that message that we can share. And that's what we're getting into, some of the nitty gritty here, which I love. And that's some of the work that we do with clients is, what is that message? How are we going to relate your impact to income? Because I talk to a lot of attorneys. My agency helps lawyers and doctors, service-based professionals. And when we talk with our client, they have an idea, right? They're like, I want to talk about this, and this is my message. This is what I believe in. But how does that relate to your profession? How does that relate, right? Or it might relate really great, and we need to create the offer, like the specific thread that goes from point A to point B, right? In sales, we know we're at one point, want to get to another, and how do we bridge that gap, right? And so as a marketer, even though I'm, doing press and publicity for clients, I'm thinking through the marketing, blueprints that we have in the formulas to make sure that our messaging, even though it's a PR message, it's still converting in a marketing way, right? There's still like our hook story offer. We've still got a call to action. We've still got certain things that we want to have from the communication standpoint while we're being in that authority position. And that's really the perfect storm that we get to create, which I love.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you describe that, it kind of sets me off down a particular direction, which is thinking, do I have to be almost beholden to media channels? So in other words, the TEDx or those conferences that you're talking about, or almost on somebody else's platform. That's one thing, but of course that takes time, and if I don't necessarily get any quick wins as a lawyer, I might be thinking, oh, that marketing stuff and all those marketed ideas, they don't really work, so I need to get back to just doing what I'm doing. Whereas actually, if there is some resistance there, could it be that we can actually self-serve? So I'm thinking about our own platforms, our own webinar series, for example, maybe even opening up our own conference locally. It might be an online conference or something that we could do, maybe even a podcast even, so are there kind of other things that we can actually add into the mix so we get some form of control? So even though the numbers might not be so impressive, as you say, going from 100 to 100,000, in one jump, we might not get that at the first hurdle, but actually we can make a start, almost hone our practice, hone our skills doing it locally in our own control before we then release ourselves to the big world. Is there some logic behind that?
There is, and the best day to plant a tree was what, 20 years ago. The next best day is today. It's kind of the same thing, right? It would be great to get on big stages, and that's definitely possible. But guess what? That's someone else's stage. So if you need to, why not create your own stage, right? And I'm a big fan of that. I'll talk about that in a minute, but I kind of want to go back to something that you said where, if they're trying something and it's not working, right? A lot of us, we tried to walk a lot of times and we fell down when we were babies and we fell down, but we're not crawling today, but because we stuck with it. And I really want to encourage everyone listening today that there is momentum to the actions that you take, right? And if you eat one salad today, you're not going to be healthy tomorrow if you've been eating cheeseburgers every day for the past 10 years. But what I can say is that today is a great day to start that momentum. And even when we start working with clients, we're not landing media day 2. That would be foolish to think that. There is a ramp up period. There is that momentum building period. But we have a framework that always generates results. Different results, different platforms, different levels, sure. But we've done this enough times. This is not the first rodeo. And I really encourage our clients to trust us as they want their clients to trust them, right? As an attorney, you often tell your clients like wacky things, right? Let me define the term wacky, right? Like they thought it was going left and you tell them, well, the law says it has to go right, right? And so you get in this conversation with your client where they really do have to trust you. And they're almost somewhat blind in that, depending on what area of law you're in. So what's my point here is that we want to acknowledge that there's a point where you get to build that momentum and it's not immediate. So stick with something if it's, if you're using a proven method, we want to make sure that you're not jumping ship before you get to the gold. And then to your other point of this of, how do we refine this? Like what other options are available for us? I've got a client and she runs her own webinars. They're monthly webinars and she signs clients from that. That's her way that she does marketing. And one way that she promotes those webinars is on her own website, but it's also on Eventbrite, right? So it's a consumer practice area that she focuses in. There's consumers on Eventbrite. And so just like she would host a pop-up in a local community center, she's gonna host a webinar and do it on there. And it's really manageable, right? Talk about the way that you can, fit this into your schedule, the way that you can really refine your message, host your own stage, right? I've done that before. I've hosted quite a few of my own virtual summits where I'll interview experts and then put together a show. I'm hosting it and I'm just interviewing experts and then we're sharing that with the audience, right? We've hosted, the Law Firm Growth Master Series. We've Unleash Your Brand Master Series, working on another one right now. And that's kind of a way too, where I'm positioning myself in an authority position simply just because I'm putting the project together, right? I'm producing all of this. And so if no one's going to give you a stage, if no one's going to give you a table, bring your own table and you get to create your own stage, just like my client's doing. We've helped her to create her own stage. She creates her own webinars and she's able to sign clients from there. Another way, and I think that this is kind of where we were going with this, is that if you're not ready, and I only mean that because the thoughts in your own head say you're not ready for media, right? Not being on Bloomberg, if that's scary, there's other ways that you can work to refine your message. And one of those is doing something just like this, being on a podcast. I regularly do podcast recordings because I feel that it's helpful for people to, one, be educated, get some information, and then two, this helps build a relationship, right? If we've booked a call and you're watching this because we have a call in 2 days from now you're going to know how I sound, you're going to know how I look, you're going to know a little bit about how I think. And now you have a first impression of me, and it's not reliant on those first 5 minutes of this first meeting that we're having, right? So now you've got a more well-rounded perspective. That's what people want.
I love this. I mean, there's just so much value here, isn't there? I mean, it's almost like you can't lose, or can you? Are there certain channels or there's certain things that you've seen where it doesn't work quite as well as we're saying here? Because it all sounds great if you really, really commit to this. If you've got that level of patience, you're in it for the long game, and you're willing to experiment a little bit, then it's all going to be perfect. Well, obviously, it isn't. Are there certain channels that are more of a challenge, or certain approaches or platforms that you'd say, this is where you really need to kind of almost wait till phase 2? Are there any that spring to mind?
I don't think that there's any that we would want to wait until like a phase 2 for, unless the client is not very solid on what their business is or what their offer is, right? If this was a if this was a doctor, or let's stay in law. So if this was a lawyer and they were previously in corporate law, right? Maybe they were working for a big firm. Maybe they were working for a big corporation. Maybe they were in a nonprofit organization. And now they're transitioning into becoming their own, like hanging their own shingle, right? Doing their own firm, or maybe they're going from one big firm into another big firm, right? But maybe a different area of law. So here's the answer. If you're in a transition period, or if there's question marks about you getting new clients coming to you, right? You don't really know what firm you would bring them with. You don't know what offer it would be. You don't know what rate you would, all of that. If there's questions around that, then I would say it's probably a good idea not to start in this marketing, phase, right? Because I'm a big proponent of frameworks, and Geek House uses my framework of brand, market, grow. And PR straddles branding and marketing, right? But really, if we're being out there in the press, people are going to come back and look at us, right? So if we're out there, we need to have everything already built so that we can catch the fish that are coming in. And so to someone like that, if they're in transition, if they're going to hang their own shingle, if they're like in between two areas of law, I would say this: let's focus on your brand, right? Let's focus on who you are, what you're offering. Let's get your offer down. How are you doing this? What type of clients do you want? Because that's the other factor too, is who are you targeting? That's going to dictate what types of news platforms we're reaching out to, what types of podcasts we're reaching out to. So we need to put the marketing blocks, all the building blocks, in the right order. And so I would start them with brand. Who are you? What are you doing? Where are you doing it? Who do you want to come? That's within brand. Then we move to that second pillar: brand, market, grow. Within market, we're going to look at, okay, what do we need to market this effectively? So now we already know who, what, when, where, why. Now what do we need to market? Well, we need a good offer. We need some credibility, which is where the press component comes in. And we build that within marketing. But it doesn't make sense to put it in the other order.
So I love the science behind this. So you said it's part art, part science, I think, right at the start, or I'm paraphrasing you here, Leonard. But I think, it feels that you've got to kind of, there's tangible evidence behind this, but also you've got to feel your way through this, because it feels like there's different flavors and different versions for different people. I mean, a question for you here then. So if somebody says, okay, I'm buying into this, I kind of think in the long term, I could be up for this. I could be that face of the firm, or I could do this from a personal branding perspective, but I'm not ready yet to stand on stage. I mean, I look great. I've got a great kind of persona, if you like, visually, but I've got some great quotes. Could like an infographic approach, so not actually me talking or me being on stage, could that work as an interim step? And then maybe as I begin to see some effects here, see some new clients coming through, maybe I'll grow into that kind of more performance type of role. Is that okay? And also, if somebody says, well, I'm happy talking, but I want the camera off, I'm more than happy doing a podcast, but it's not one like this, not a video podcast. It's just an audio one, because I don't look great or I don't have the self-confidence. Are there kind of caveats we can put into this that kind of meet people where they are as a human?
There definitely are. There's parameters. If we're looking at someone and we want to educate people, right? That's really what experts are meant to do. They're confidential, right? They hold your confidence. They're trusted advisors. They're educating you because they're the expert. They know more. So an infographic is a great way to get that knowledge out of the lawyer or the expert's head and get it into a digestible format, right? When we produce content for clients, like in a blog, if there's like something convoluted that's difficult in words, we'll produce an infographic. You know, we do the same thing for keynotes, right? If we're giving a keynote, we want to make sure that visual aids are the easiest way for people to understand things. So yes, definitely. It also positions you as a step ahead, right? When you have infographics, because now you've got resources, right? I could be on a call, I could text or email it over, and you can look at it on the call. It's simple, right? It's crispy, crunchy. But if you are someone who doesn't want to do, you call that the performance aspect, right? I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to do these things. I would press into that a little bit. Is it a fear that we can overcome? And is this just a new muscle that gets to be flexed, right? Can I be your fitness trainer for this? Or is this something where it is key to your personality? I've experienced that. I can count on one hand how many times I've experienced that, but I have. And it was a lawyer who I literally think went to the office, worked their hours, and then walked home and like fed their cat, brushed their teeth, went to bed, and then just repeat every day, right? Like there was like I couldn't pull anything from this person. And you know, the team worked a little bit to try to, you know, like how do we package this, right? Like how do we do this? It's kind of like taking a Barbie, but she's got no backstory, right? We don't know about the house, we don't know about Ken, we don't know about the car, we don't know about Barbie's perfect life as a doctor at the hospital. We don't know that she's also a fighter jet pilot, and we don't know any of the story. And now we just have a Barbie. Like, how interested are you in that Barbie? Not really interested, right? There's no story. Media is all about stories. Humans are all about exchanging stories, right? I've got a great client and her name's Patty. She says the shortest distance between two people is the story. And I absolutely love that quote because it's true. You could be standing in line at a post office and exchange a story, and now you know that person kind of like they're your friend, right? In that context. So 100%, if this person, if it is a core attribute to their personality that they're just kind of like a wet mop, then that's a difficult person to get in the media. Very difficult. And if they don't want to be on video, okay, then we can do no TV, right? We can do just written articles or no radio or just radio, right? So there are ways, right? I'm not saying that there's no path for them, but it's definitely more of a challenge. And when you say like we have to feel our way through this, it cuts a lot of that wiggle room out because we've got nothing to play with. So for someone like that, yeah, I would definitely encourage them to, you know, still look to package their expertise because that's what the profession is about, right? We're advisors. We have to be able to take our knowledge and package it, but do it in a way that feels natural. Because if you're not a TV person, if you're not a camera person, and we put you on camera, you're going to go white and throw up, and we don't want that. No, thank you.
So succinctly put. Yes, that's beautiful. We've got this image. I think everybody's now got this image of the people in pot A and the people in pot B, and you kind of know some people who are going to be in either. So yeah, it's really interesting that you could count on one hand those people who were totally and utterly resistant to this stuff. I think most people will get it, won't they, at some point, with a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of confidence building in certain cases. I mean, one thing that you've been very clear about, Leonard, though, is there has to be a why, there has to be a reason. And I'm guessing for many people listening to this, it is about fee generation, billable hours, whatever we're talking about here. And again, everybody can translate that into their own world. The call to action obviously is going to be absolutely key. Is that something that is always in mind when you're kind of creating the strategy? Does everything point to that, or are there instances where no, it's just about building the personal brand and we'll kind of save that bit for the end or for later? Does it always figure or not?
It depends on the context. So your question of, is there always a call to action? Is that always what we're our home plate that we're driving towards? And the answer is yes, but within the context. So I answer it that way because if we're on a national broadcast, right? We can't say, okay, go to abclaw.com. It doesn't fit, right? And we coach clients specifically about, okay, this is your expertise, this is not your marketing message. So in the actual placement, in the actual interview, in the actual article, there probably is not a call to action, right? If we can insert some type of call to action within a larger quote, then perhaps, right? You got to be a little skilled to do that. But generally, no. We are giving the advice, we are answering the question. Reason being is that we, the attorney, is being that expert for the journalist so that the readers can understand better, right? We're providing value. We're not selling, we are providing value. And I'm very clear that that's what we're doing in the interviews, right? Clients have to know that, because if not, things go off the rails, right? We also want to be a human. So we're not citing code sections. We're not given the legalese. We're not given the grandstanding, subpart. We're not doing any of that. We're explaining it as if we were talking to a 5-year-old, maybe a 10-year-old, because you're never going to quote a code section to a 5-year-old, right? Like, you're just not. So we like to put it in that context. Think about going in the interview and doing it that way, because then you're going to land the message that you need to land. Now, wait, don't let me lose you. So here's the other part of this. Where does the CTA come into place? Okay, we're going to go do the interview, and we're going to get a recording of that interview, or we're going to go do an interview, we're going to get that article published. Now comes the other half of the work. That's only half the work. Now we've got to promote what you just did. Promote your placement. If you're not sharing this with your list, if you're not posting it on socials, if you're not touting your accomplishment, then you're missing out on 50% of the work that you need to be doing, and probably 90% of the juice that you could squeeze out of this result. So that looks like we want to share it, right? We want to package this message that we just did in press, right? That's like our story, that's our expertise. Great. We're going to package that, but we need some way to hook people in. So we want the hook in front of that, and then below that, we want the call to action, right? So I'm going to take that media, I'm going to give them context in my hook, right? I'm thinking about if I'm sending a letter to my, an email to my list, right? I'm going to give them context. I'm going to hook them in. Then we're going to place that media placement there, right? Whether it's an article or a video, we're going to screenshot it, etc. Then we're going to go in for the kill. Now we've got the CTA, because they've got relevance. Now they see the person as an authority. They have the context. Now we're ready to make a decision, an action, something like that.
And there it is, people. Follow that step by step, because I think what Leonard's just shared with you is that is the secret sauce of this whole process, I think. And of course, you need to apply it and translate it to your own sectors, your own firms, and your own industries. Leonard, I'm going to give you the opportunity now, as we round off this episode, to do your call to action, because this is an opportunity. We're allowed to do that because this is our platform. We get to choose, which is amazing here. Where would you like people to go to keep in touch and to learn more?
Yes, very grateful for your platform, first and foremost. And if people are looking for more of this kind of conversation, then you're going to be interested in the Podcast Guest Intensive, which is a semi-regular training that I host where I'm sharing with you how to take your knowledge and package it into being a podcast guest, just like this. Right. And we've talked today about some of the different phases and how we build the momentum and how we start with one thing and it grows into another and we can level up from there. And this training is designed specifically. I spent time designing this so that you are getting the foundational steps. These are the crawling to walking steps, right? I'm not throwing you in the deep end. There's a lot of support in the container when we are doing the training, and you're getting the step by step. I'm giving you templates. I'm giving you tips and tricks. I'm giving you all the little details that you need to go from, wait, I can be on a podcast today, to being on an actual podcast, just like me and Neil are right now. So that is free to join. You're able to attend that for free. You can do that at podcastguestintensive.com. Again, that's podcastguestintensive.com. And we're talking about your profile, your media bio, how you're pitching out to shows, where to find them. You don't have to go create opportunities. There's opportunities that already exist out there. Again, go to podcastguestintensive.com, and we're going to talk about all of that and so much more.
Wow. And their people is actually how you do a pitch as well. Leonard, you're very good at this, aren't you? That is absolutely the way to round off an episode, is practice what you preach. Actually do what you're saying people should be doing. Do it yourself for your own business. And I think all marketers listening to this, you've got to take a leaf out of Leonard's book here, because actually that was very precise and very focused. I think we know where we're going now. And I will, of course, put the link to the podcast training in the show notes. Leonard, this has been an absolute pleasure. I mean, honestly, so many little tips and tricks that you've shared throughout this, as well as a lot of strategic thought, which I'm hoping will get a lot of people thinking. I mean, a huge amount of value. So very, very grateful for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Neil. It's been a pleasure.